In 1871, 29 convicts walked out of Carson City's prison and simply vanished into the Nevada desert without a single guard noticing in time. They had spent weeks quietly planning every detail of the breakout, and the route they chose crossed terrain that would permanently carry their name. The posse that hunted them covered nearly 200 miles of brutal Sierra Nevada wilderness before the trail went cold near a remote mountain lake. That lake still exists today, and if you have ever hiked or paddled there, you were standing inside a crime scene from 1871. So who were these 29 men? And how does a functioning prison just let them walk out? The Nevada State Prison in 1871 was barely a decade old, underfunded, and staffed too thin for the number of men it held. Most of the prisoners were convicted of robbery, assault, and murder, hardened men who had nothing waiting for them except more years behind those walls. That combination of desperation and a stretched thin operation created exactly the kind of gap that someone with patience could exploit. And these men had patience. They had been watching, waiting, and planning for weeks before anyone outside those walls had any idea what was coming. These men didn't rush the gate on a desperate impulse. They watched, they waited, and they planned, with a patience that should make you uncomfortable. For weeks inside the Nevada State Prison, a group of 29 inmates studied the rhythms of their guards the way a hunter studies an animal. They tracked shift changes, mapped blind spots, and quietly moved tools from one hiding place to another without a single slip. How do that many people hold a secret that long without someone talking? The answer is that every man in that group understood the stakes were absolute. You either all got out, or none of you did. They fashioned cutting tools from materials the prison itself provided, working in the dark hours when the night watch grew lazy and routine. The timing they chose wasn't random. It was a window, narrow and deliberate, when the fewest eyes were on the fewest walls. 29 men moved as one organism, and the Carson City guards never saw it coming until the cage was already empty. 31 men vanished into the Nevada desert, and the people of Carson City wanted them back. A posse formed fast, lawmen, ranchers, and volunteers who knew these mountains better than most men know their own streets. The fugitives had a head start, but they were moving through some of the harshest terrain in the American West, and winter was already pressing down from the peaks. Every canyon they crossed, every ridge they climbed, the posse was reading the same ground one day behind them. The escapees pushed south and west, deeper into the Sierra Nevada, putting distance between themselves and the prison walls they'd left in ruins. But 200 miles of hard country is not the same as 200 miles of safety. The posse wasn't stopping. Near a cold, remote mountain lake that didn't even have a name worth remembering yet, the chase finally ended. Lawmen cornered the remaining fugitives there, and the confrontation was violent enough that the place earned a new identity on the spot. That nameless lake became Convict Lake, and it carries that name to this day. The men who fled Carson City didn't just make history, they rewrote the map. The men who ran from Carson City in 1871 left something behind that no one planned to preserve. Every ridge they crossed, every valley where the posse finally closed in, got quietly renamed after the event itself. The hill they scrambled over on their way out of town is now called Prison Hill, and on any given weekend you can find mountain bikers and hikers working the same slope those prisoners desperate for freedom once climbed. There's something genuinely strange about that. A recreational trail running directly over a desperate escape route, and most people riding it have no idea. 60 miles south, the lake where the surviving men were cornered carries the word convict in its name to this day. Convict Lake sits inside one of the most photographed landscapes in all of California, beautiful enough to stop your breath. The men who gave it that name were not thinking about scenery when they arrived. So if you've ever hiked Prison Hill or camped at Convict Lake, you were already standing inside this story, you just didn't know it yet.